Halloween's come early, ladies and gentlemen. So today we will be celebrating by looking at some cursed C# that I came across recently. So those of you who may know, I tend to do quite a bit of programming between C# and Python specifically. And C# is what is known as a statically typed programming language, while Python is considered more dynamically and loosely typed. What we mean by this is if I make an integer of type number, we'll just call it number, I cannot take this number and set it to the number as a string, right? You can't do this in C#, but if you did this in Python, this would be fine. Now, I came across this keyword, this variable type in C# recently while looking up cursed Python, because I had located some very interesting things you could do with certain functions like exec and eval, and I may do a Python cursed version as well for a video very soon, so look out for that, I suppose. So what we're looking into is basically turning off the type checker until runtime. So how it works is if we have a list type int, we'll call it nums equals new list, and we add some numbers, so let's do 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Okay, let's do that. Now we can call console write line, and we can write nums.count. It has a count as its property. Now if we tried this with, say, a regular integer, there is no count. You cannot call count on a number. See, I get a flag here because there is no property count. But if I turn number right here into dynamic, then I can call anything. Now, just to show you real quick, this right here will return 5. As you can see there. And if I remove my comments, this will return what is known as a, I believe it's a binding exception, runtime binder exception, because int does not have the property count, so it blows up. What you're basically telling the type checker, the compiler here, is trust me, bro, I got this. And the runtime, or the actual compiler, is kind of like shrugging its shoulders, like, all right, bro, see what you got. And if you screw up at runtime, you will blow up. Your program will blow up. It is cursed. We can combine this with something even more cursed. So, for those of you aware, obviously, you can't, if you have a list of type int, once again, you can't put other data types in this. So if I wanted to put a string right here, I would get an argument error. Now, if I change int to type object, as most programmers here know, object is the header class for every type of class in every programming language, more or less. Specifically object-oriented ones, and therefore something like an integer or a string, I guess you would call it a ambiguous object. You can do a character. You could do null. These can all be placed into a list of object for the reason that they're all technically objects. But what if we abuse this? We can create a function here. Let's call it a cursed function, because that's what it is to me. It's going to take the parameters of params dynamic array curses. Or I guess we can call this objects. So to break this down for you guys, the params keyword effectively means we can provide this function with as many parameters as we want, and it'll be supplied to the function with the name objects as an array. This allows for me to loop through this, like as in we can do for each dynamic, and if you put var here, it'll probably just pick the correct actual type for them. So it is better to simply use dynamic, and we could put cursed in objects. And now you can iterate through objects and pull every single type of object from here. So let's do that. It sounds like fun. So instead of using a list of type object, or we could also use object here as well. We can call cursed function like this, or we can also call it, by spelling it correctly, like this. And I can strictly copy paste all those parameters there and it'll work. This will work. Okay? So what we'll end up with is these are all objects. They are being more or less cast to cursed, or to dynamic, and given the name cursed for the for loop. So what can we do with this nonsense? Well, as I showed earlier, you can call any property on these. Let's add one more and make this more readable for you guys. Let's add one more parameter that I didn't show off yet. This is going to be something for invoking a function. So we have the open parentheses. Actually, it's new object. We don't actually need to do that, but we can also show that one off. New object can be supplied as well. But we can also do the funct keyword. Let's give it an integer. And it'll be a lambda function or anonymous function that just returns 42. This is also known as an invocable, so you can invoke this so let's do this in a try catch. So we're gonna need several try catches to display this. So let's try and catch exception EX, and let's console.writeLine ex.message. Now what we're going to be doing in our try is we're going to try to run different properties to see what happens. So we can try cursed dot, let's try writing them out actually. Console.writeLine cursed dot count. Let's put this into a string so I can show it off. Count, cursed.count. If it has a count, so for instance, none of these technically have a count, then it'll throw an error. We can do length, if I could spell correctly today, cursed.length. We can do the name. I actually want these to be swapped. We can also curse dot invoke. I believe that's how you perform this one. So if I run this now, some of these will print out proper like their proper property names, right? So we should get, for this one, length of 2. For this one, length of 2. For this one, we may get the name. It's an anonymous object. For this one, I expect to see nothing. For this one, I also expect to see nothing. For this one, if I have the syntax correct, then it may invoke. In which case, it would just return 42. Otherwise, they should all begin displaying messages. So I'm going to take this try catch and I'm going to copy paste it 4 times and permutate it real quick so that way we only get one isolated of each. This is bad code, but it's meant to be a cursed showcase anyways, so it's fine. Seems I forgot to put the name there. So now let's run it. So let's start with the top one. So we have an integer. 22 is of type int. Int does not have a length, a name, a count, or invoke. Let's go with the string. It has a length of 2. It printed it. It does not. Okay, and then we have the name, can't touch this, showed off from this. String does not have a definition, or it does not have a definition for length. And then we go to the character. So this right here is a, I remember the specific name for this would be a anonymous object. Doesn't have a name. And technically this one also does the same. This is a character. And it does not have length, invoke, etc. You cannot perform any bind on any runtime on a null reference. Object does not have any of these. And the function lambda does not have a length, name, or count, but when you invoke it, you get the returned number 42. Now, if you really wanted to be diabolical, you could create a cursed class. And you could give it a dynamic. You can give it a dynamic field. So we want that to be public. And in the constructor, we take some object y though, and we can set this dot y though equal to the casted dynamic of y though. Now this is, you don't need to explicitly put this, it'll obviously be cast to dynamic anyways implicitly, but we'll explicitly pass it. And you could use this to troll people who are helping you with your code, as they'll have no idea. So if you want it to, this object would have a, it's like we could create this object, we could create a cursed equals new cursed, and we have to give it a we can give it an object. So let's give it 22, for instance. And if we wanted to, we could try calling stuff on that as well. So we could do console.writeLine curse dot why though dot, and you could put any type of, you could try different things underneath this as well. For instance, if you wanted to get the type, this will either give you int or dynamic. So it'll give you int because at runtime it says, oh, we've got an int. It still keeps the actual type behind it, but the actual before runtime it's not really listed as an int. So you could pull any integer based or even if you wanted to, you could put a string in here and you could pull any of these out of it. So what if we could do something like, let's put 2 capital letters and we can just pull 2 lower, and this will print, but you don't notice this isn't even a string. So like you could do this and it'll show up as double E, but if I change this to back to 22, it'll throw an error. This is cursed. Hope you guys enjoyed me rambling. I don't normally free code on videos while recording, so this was at least an experience for the books for sure. If you guys enjoyed this type of content and want to see more cursed programming, I have an idea for a Python cursed video. If this video does well enough, perhaps I will go through and do that. I actually think Python might be more cursed than C#, because functions like the Python exec, for example, this function in Python here allows you to basically run and execute code from like a string. So you could basically write a function into a JSON object in a different file and then parse it to string and then run it from your code without your code ever seeing it. And if you hide the file so your group mates and coding partners don't look at it, then they just can't see it. It'll be debugging. I think somebody needs to send this code. I'm actually gonna have to schedule a date with the church to get this code exercised by the QA team because it is cursed, ladies and gentlemen.